Looking for wholesome, convenient meals for this jam-packed fall season? Get Factor, America's #1 ready-to-eat meal kit, and get eating well off your to-do list in just 2 minutes. Get 50% off Factor with code OCC50 at factormeals.com/OCC50. Welcome back for another helping of oysters, clams, and cockles presented by Bolin Media. I am Ross Bolin here with Barrett Dudley. Barrett, ahoy, matey!
Ahoy. Is that a reference to pirates on ships?
Yeah, I've been watching Our Flag Means Death. That's me.
Good. That's good.
Being piratey.
I've just been trying to figure out who built the foundation.
Yeah.
Or should I say foundations?
Oh, wow. Plural. Wow. Yeah. First, we tried to figure out who built the silo.
That's right. Yeah.
Now, we're trying to figure out who built the foundations.
Yeah, and I actually don't know. I don't know if they're gonna. No spoilers. Because people might still want to be catching up on Foundation.
Sure.
Much in the same way that we are. It's a little weird to be like all in, like hyping myself up, just gassing up this show and being like it came, and then realizing this came out 2 years ago, Barrett. But you're way behind the times.
But didn't season 2 drop this year?
I think season 2 came out this year.
I don't think we're that far, but I'm all caught up.
You're all caught up, so you're a little more up to date than I am, and you're allowed to feel a little bit more relevant and recent. But for me, I'm just still like watching stuff that came out 2.5 years ago. So
that's okay.
Yeah,
there's a backlog. This was the time to get to the backlog. Apple TV, frankly, had not done enough to make me feel obligated to like check their catalog regularly.
Yeah.
Until this show, probably. This is like I'm finally willing to be like, okay, they're really doing it.
It wasn't Hijack that did it for you. You weren't just cheesed up on Idris Elba, dealing with
the worst hijackers of all time.
Dealing with some hijackers on an international flight.
No, that one didn't do it for me.
No,
but
okay.
Foundation is sort of.
Right.
Anyway, let's start with some bad news. As of yesterday, SAG-AFTRA and the major studios have suspended their negotiations. We've hit another bump in the road strike-wise.
Oh.
How is this not over? Your guess is as good as mine, but just to give you a little bit of the detail, we don't have to go into a full-blown discussion, but just so everybody's up to speed, here's where we're at from Variety. Talks between SAG-AFTRA and the major studios have broken down as the Alliance of Motion Picture and Television Producers said Wednesday that the gap between the sides is too great. In a statement to members after midnight, the union accused the studios of engaging in bully tactics. They're bullying them, Barrett. They also said that the
classic studios.
They had walked away from the bargaining table after refusing to counter the union's latest offer. The union expressed profound disappointment with the latest development and urged members to show up at picket lines to express their solidarity. The key stumbling block is a union proposal to share in streaming revenue, which the AMPTP says would cost $800 million a year. SAG-AFTRA says that figure is exaggerated by 60%, and that its proposal would cost the streaming platforms 57 cents per subscriber per year. Now, again, I find myself asking, like, how do the studios imagine this goes over, like, for the public, for consumer? Like, they raise their prices pretty much every year. We just talked about this. Like, everything's going up like another $4.
Right.
57 cents per subscriber? Y'all can't make that happen? Like, for God's sake, enough of this nonsense.
I mean, they've already bent us over a barrel on so many different occasions. Like, fuck it. Like, just add the 57 cents to my bill right now. Just do it.
Seriously. If that's what it would take to end this, I'll pay the extra 57 cents a month.
And they're saying a year. They're not even saying per month.
Oh, just annually.
But,
yeah, you're right.
But for the studios, because we're all idiots and won't know the difference, just, 57 extra cents a month. Just do it. Just add it to the bill. Put it on my tab.
Yeah, this is, it's really annoying, man. It's really, really annoying, especially when the details come out about, like, what this is like the original argument. The whole thing was about streaming. They're still right here. In terms of the streaming, they've made, like, no progress. We've been doing this for months.
Yeah.
Damn it. So that's where we're at with the actors' strike. As we all know, the writers' strike ended a few weeks ago, and yet the actors and the studios have a massive gap between them still. it appears.
Well, that's pretty crazy. I guess that this means that we were fearful that this was going to happen with the writer's strike, but now that the actors are not, have yet to come to an agreement and will not be going back to work anytime soon. Like, I don't think anything's getting done this year as far as production goes. Maybe they wrap this all up, but like, I think we are essentially this Q4. This is lost.
Yeah.
Like, we're not getting. It'll just be interesting to see what happens to I think the only like network show that I'm actively like watching is Abbott Elementary at this point, but like it's obviously not coming back in the fall. At this point, what will it even be able to manage? And shows like it, what will they even be able to manage for like a spring season? You know what I mean?
That's the big problem. You know who has a window of opportunity here? The British.
The British, man, they always got a window of opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just out there, just doing stuff like just being Peaky Blinders with it,
Yeah.
Are you rewatching Peaky Blinders? Who told me they were rewatching Peaky Blinders? Oh, Will. Will is watching Peaky Blinders.
Oh, cool.
You've watched all Peaky Blinders,
I haven't watched
right?
the final season.
Should I say Peaky Blinders one more time?
Peaky Blinders. Peaky fucking Blinders.
But I know that's a show that people really like. So
I really liked that show, yeah.
What about Top Boy?
Never watched it.
Whenever I think about Top Boy, it just makes me want to go, Top Boy, blah, blah.
I know Drake is involved in
is,
Top Boy, and I believe as one of the promotional marketing tools for this most recent album, one of the cafes that is heavily featured in Top Boy in London, he has turned into For All the Dogs Cafe. It's like a pop-up shop, except it's a pop-up cafe. If you were so into Drake that you felt the urge to go and eat at For All the Dogs Cafe.
Well, it makes a lot of sense because guys that are kind of gully and grimy with it and like might be considered dogs.
Sure.
The one thing about them is that they love cafes.
Absolutely can't get enough of cafes. Yeah.
Real classic Top Boy behavior is just hanging out at cafes.
I've got a couple of
getting on the internet and stuff.
Yeah, surfing the web. Using the Wi-Fi. I've got a couple of Halloween, spooky season, October themed pieces of content that I have begun consuming. One, I watched in full. I talked about it the other week. Talk to Me is the name of the movie.
Yeah.
An A24 horror film. It was $5.99 for me to rent. I finally carved out a window of time to watch without my wife alone because she won't do horror stuff. And I'll read you the synopsis, okay? Did you see the trailer for this? When a group of friends discover how to conjure spirits with an embalmed hand, they become hooked on the new thrill and high-stakes party game until one of them goes too far and unleashes terrifying supernatural forces, which is my first complaint about the film. When the kids start doing what they're doing, you're like, well, you guys are kind of asking for it. Like, it just removed the thing in horror movies. It's typically like a driving force behind what you care about is that you don't want the victims to get murdered. You're like, oh, these poor kids, they were just trying to go make a porno in a farmhouse, and now they're all dead. That was the theme of one of those movies that came out recently. X, I think it was.
Okay, all right.
But this one, it's like these kids kind of ask for it. If somebody gives you an embalmed hand and tells you that you're about to make contact with the other side, just, maybe think it out.
What are you doing if somebody hands you an embalmed hand and it's
not touching that thing?
No, yeah.
No, not this one. Have you seen this hand? It looks like it's going to ruin your life. And it does. It ruins all these kids' lives. It's a crazy movie. But I'll say this, like, the thing about these A24 horror films, they're really well done. They're low budget. They get good writers. They get good young actors and actresses, and they seem to do a really great job casting. So you never feel like you're watching some like low quality bullshit. It feels well made. But a lot of them lack like substance in the way that I require if I'm going to absorb some dark horror shit. Like, I need horror movies to have some type of overarching theme or lesson or something to say usually. Like, that's what I would prefer. I don't just want to walk away from the movie like, well, that was extremely messed up, and now I feel sick inside. Like, that's not really what I'm looking for.
And that's how this one kind of left you?
No, it was like, it was an okay enough version of a larger message and theme that I was not upset. But it's not their best work. I'd give it like a C+, B-, something in there. The stupid little the dead person hand, embalmed hand thing, it ends up tying to like addiction, basically, and like being a high schooler and doing recreational drugs without really thinking about the consequences. Just like, yeah, we just want to get high, man. Except like smoking some pot makes a lot more sense to me than like communicating with the dead and thinking there won't be consequences. Anyway, it was solid. I wasn't upset I coughed up the $5.99, but it's not one that I'm like, I highly recommend this. If you like horror, you got to go watch it. It wasn't that. It wasn't like groundbreaking or anything. It was a pretty fun, some scary moments, little hour and a half ride through this weird group of it's Australia. They're in Australia. There's a kangaroo, Barrett, that plays a large part in the plot.
You can pre-order a Talk to Me party hand if you would like. You can buy one for yourself on A24's website.
I imagine this will be a big Halloween costume this year. People walking around with this.
I think they sold out of the first order, so this one, if you pre-order now, it doesn't even expect to ship until late December. It's $110.
Who's placing that order? I'll have it for Christmas.
And well, right, but I mean, if you need it now, you're gonna have to go secondary market and pay $300 on eBay.
Good Lord.
Yeah.
Hot item.
Hot commodity. Yeah, A24, they crush the merch. And you got to think that when they come out with something like a fucking embalmed Talk to Me party hand, people are going to scoop that up.
Yeah.
That's the hottest ticket for all the Halloween parties this year.
The other spooky thing, I started watching this, and I somehow got my wife to participate in one episode. Have you seen the new Apple TV Plus show, The Changeling?
I've seen the mini trailers.
Lakeith
Stanfield, who's great in everything that he does.
He was the draw for me.
Yeah, it looked really interesting. Kind of horror thriller mix type stuff.
Right.
And I just probably going to be a tough sell in my household because of its, like you said, because of the horror nature of it. But yeah, how was the pilot? How was the first episode?
The trailer made it look like it was going to be pretty straight up horror, like with thriller, whatever in that genre, in that mix. And the first episode, I got like 30 minutes in, and I was like, wow, that trailer was really misleading. It's like a love story, and like it's kind of interestingly narrated in a non-horror film style. But as you get to the end of the pilot, you start to see like, oh, okay, this is getting weird and dark, and this has all been set up so far, basically. But it's one of those that kind of it tricks you a little bit. Like, if you hadn't seen the trailer and you started watching this show, you would have no idea, like 75% of the way through the pilot, that you were about to experience some freaky shit.
Yeah.
So I haven't seen enough to like grade it, obviously, but I'm definitely intrigued. The wife is not in for the rest of the ride. Yeah, after the first, I tried. We had to like take a break because one of the kids got up or something, and then when we returned to the bedroom, she was like, "Yeah, I think I'm done." Yeah, and I was like, "Damn it, damn kids, man! I had her hooked."
Yeah,
but yeah. So those are the two things I've taken in since we last met. And we can move on to some of the things that you've watched in a moment. Today's episode is brought to you by Athletic Greens. Why take a bunch of different things when you can just mix one scoop of powder in water once a day? Their flagship product, AG1, was designed with ease in mind so you can live healthier and better without having to do too much. It's the healthiest thing you can do in under a minute. AG1 has been part of millions of mornings since 2010. In my time using it, I've noticed an increase in energy, mood support, and better overall digestion. The goal of Athletic Greens is to make it easier for you to live your best life. If you want better gut health, immune system support, hate taking a bunch of different pills and vitamins, and you want something that tastes great, AG1 has you covered. If you're looking for an easier way to take supplements, Athletic Greens is giving you a free 1-year supply of vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. Just go to athleticgreens.com/dragon. That's athleticgreens.com/dragon to support our show and your body at the same time. Go now, athleticgreens.com/dragon. All right, Barrett, you mentioned you took in Loki.
Yeah, Loki is back for season 2.
And you really liked season 1.
I loved season 1. Season 1 made my top 10 shows of the year list in 2021, I believe. and I think it like knocked out WandaVision. You'll remember that was that was the year that like that Marvel was kind of like debuting its Disney Plus, hey, now we're on the small screen as well kind of strategy, which seemed to be going really great for it for a little while.
It did, yeah, at first.
And then crashed and burned real hard with a bunch of dog shit shows and movies that nobody really cared about or was interested in.
They went quantity over quality, it appears.
They kind of did. And so I don't know. I want to talk about Loki, but I also just kind of wanted to get your take on like you were on a mission at one point to
take in all the Marvel
films, and how far did you get?
Somewhere around the Thor stuff. Like,
so not real far.
No, I probably, like 10 or 12 movies.
Okay, yeah.
Before I was just like, I mean, I'll be honest with you. A big part of it was knowing that I know how Avengers Endgame goes, because of memes and the internet. I don't think that was a spoiler you could avoid.
So you have very little appetite for Marvel in general, would you say, right?
I mean, their best stuff, I love. I think it's great, like everybody else does. Like Iron Man 1, fantastic, you know. But like when you get into some of the more
a movie that's 16 years old is the Marvel appetite that you have.
Yeah, like they've for my taste, they've clearly overdone it, right? Like there's too many movies. There's not enough of them. Like I watched like the first Ant-Man, and I was like, "What the fuck is this? Like, what am I doing?" And I've had a lot of people tell me, like, you got to give that one another chance. It's really good. Like, I shouldn't have to. It's 3 fucking hours long. Give it another chance. He turns into an ant.
Yeah.
Or, ant-sized.
Right.
He's Paul Rudd. He's going to climb through your pee hole. Like, that's the movie. and I've seen a version of that on The Boys that, frankly, I don't want to relive. So my appetite for Marvel is, I would say, below average.
It's pretty low, yeah.
Like, I just don't care.
Yeah, and I think that the public, I think that's been reflected in a lot of the recent movies as well, which still, like, if you just look at, like, the straight-up numbers, like, they may look okay.
In terms of, like, revenue that they're getting from these?
Yes, but in terms of what they're spending to make those movies, in stark contrast to what they were pulling in, they've really, really kind of lost their clout, I would say. And so, for me as well, like, basically, I'm trying to remember, like, kind of how this all went, but I think I watched Falcon and the Winter Soldier and I saw Black Widow in theaters. And then it just kind of like lost its cachet for me. It lost its pull. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. But to go back to what I was originally saying is that Loki in 2021 was an awesome show that really did a bunch of things extremely well. One of which was kind of like tie to the greater story that you knew if you were watching the Marvel movies, and were paying attention to the Avengers stuff, but also like was doing something completely different and kind of establishing like a new,
a separate storyline.
A separate storyline. Now, the rub there is that this storyline was likely intended to kind of like build the mythology and the lore for the next big bad. Right?
Oh, okay, yeah.
Who is Kang the Conqueror, portrayed by Jonathan Majors. So that's a whole nother can of worms that Marvel has to deal with now as they try to sort that out. Because
that was just not good timing for them from a business perspective.
Right, because they don't know what to do with Jonathan Majors at this point. Whether to try to like recast him or like shift strategies to like a new bad guy and just kind of like drop that whole storyline altogether. But apparently like that's what ends the third Ant-Man Quantum Mania or whatever. Anyway, this was doing some of the legwork to set up Kang. But beyond that, it's got a very specific look. It doesn't look like anything else in the Marvel universe. It's got Tom Hiddleston and Owen Wilson doing like an awesome, version of like the bantery kind of buddy cop, like, but one's a good guy and one's kind of a, a sneaky bastard type, that you can't really trust. Yeah. It's got that going for it. It reminds me of like, of some of like the quirkier kind of old school sci-fi stuff that like I'm having a hard time pulling a good comp or a good reference, but it just looks different. The whole show kind of exists in this place called the TVA, the Timekeepers something or other.
Okay.
and it basically it all looks like very old world tech, like 1980s kind of tech.
Yeah, it's like very. I'm looking through some images right now. Very throwback.
Yeah. And so it did an awesome job in its first season, telling an interesting story and establishing great characters that you really liked hanging out with. Now there's only one episode out in season 2, and it's been a 2-year gap. And I would say that's the biggest thing that it's kind of fighting right now, is that this is a show that deals with all sorts of weird time travel and time slipping and timelines and pruning those timelines and going to nether regions. And
it's a lot to remember.
And it is a shitload to remember. And so I'm like, the part of the first episode is you're just sitting there for 30 minutes being like, okay, now what happened with that guy?
Who are these people?
Where did they
again?
go?
Yeah.
And what timeline is this now? And who did that thing? And so that's like the largest hurdle. So my recommendation is, if you're not just gonna straight up rewatch Loki season 1, find one of those 15-minute YouTube videos that does a much better job recapping it than
a detailed recap
than the previously on is going to. But yeah, I Tom Hiddleston and Owen Wilson are kind of worth the price of admission for me here. And this season has added Kiwi Kwan from Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Yeah.
Right? Who's very good and very funny in the first episode. And so it still has a lot going for me. 6 episodes a season, I believe. So it's not...
it's not too big of a commitment.
It's not a huge commitment. And I still maintain that this is the best thing that Marvel is doing currently.
I'll say I really enjoyed WandaVision. That was the last Marvel thing I took on. 2021, right? I'm really curious. The Jonathan Majors thing, not to harp on it, but here's the question it makes me ask. When Marvel, one of these massive studios with they've got a 30 movie plan for the next 10 years or whatever. When they go and commit to this, in this case, a new big bad that's going to be a very important part of several movies. You're talking about billions of dollars being invested. What kind of character check occurs there? You know what I'm saying? In terms of before they make the hire official and before they say, Jonathan Majors, you're going to be, what is it, Kang? I wonder what kind of detailed digging goes on. Do you have to surrender your phone, email passwords? Do you know what I'm saying? Because there has to be some level of insurance that occurs there.
I don't think so.
You just rolling the dice, hope this guy's not a piece of shit.
I mean, didn't he do his alleged piece of shit activity after he was already well established in the cinematic universe?
I don't think so. I think it was kind of at the same time. It was when that all started to come out that he was the next guy. That's very soon after all this cancellation happened and all the accusations came out, and it was a weird, obviously immediate weird situation for Marvel in terms of how they were going to navigate it. And I don't know. I just am curious about what kind of goes on in terms of background checking and personal history exploration when it comes to that type of investment. Or when, if they're picking the next Captain America or whatever it may be, what goes into that? Because I think Hollywood now more than ever, I know Hollywood now more than ever has to have that in the equation somewhere. Back in the day, in the 50s, 60s, actors were getting away with literal murder, and it didn't matter. It didn't matter. Nobody cared. Nobody cared if, John Wayne was a racist or a homophobe or whatever, and I'm just using him as a random example. I don't know that John Wayne was either of those things. I'm just saying. Nowadays, you find out Jonathan Majors is a domestic abuser or whatever, that's devastating to the Marvel franchise because they just set this dude up as their next big bad for a 10-movie run.
Yeah.
And now they don't even know if they're going to be able to use him or they have to recast him or whatever. And obviously I'm discussing this, again, on the business Hollywood level. I'm not trying to be dismissive of potential victims or accusers in any way, shape, or form. I'm just saying, from a business perspective, these big studios, it makes me wonder how much sort of digging they do on people before they actually give them these major roles that shift the course of the whole franchise.
Yeah, and all I'm saying is that I'm pretty sure, I know I could be wrong, but given what I think I know about the timeline, I think they could have done all the vetting that they wanted to do, and none of this would have come out like at that time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that being said,
in 2020 or even 2019 when they were casting him, I don't think that there was
a bunch of evidence that he was.
There was not at that point.
Well, him as an example that furthers what I'm saying. Like now, moving forward, are they going to be like, all right, we got to really check these people out?
Probably. I do think that a lot more of that is probably happening, especially for these types of deals where they're making like large commitments, like multi-movie commitments.
And they're career-making roles. That's the thing about it that's really interesting to me.
I think from the Marvel standpoint of it all, the one thing I wanted to come back to is just that, like, in hindsight's 2020 here, but like when you look at like the run that they went on from 2008 to 2000, whatever it was, like 19, like it was basically like a decade, right? From Iron Man 1 to Avengers Endgame.
Yeah.
Part of the buy-in, right, was that you needed to see all of them to understand the following. And they would do the stingers at the end of every film that you would sit in the theater and wait for so that you could see the next little tease for whatever was going to come next and the connection points. And then they were all building to like to the Thanos of it all, to Infinity War and to Endgame. And it's just like, I don't think you can duplicate that, man.
No, that was it. You get one load to bust.
Yes.
That was it.
And so I think that was the real fallacy, is like thinking that you could do a 30-movie buildup over the course of a decade, smash every box office record that existed, like bring in like billions and billions and billions of global dollars on those last two movies especially, and then be like, okay, the deck is reset. We're doing it all over again.
Yeah, that was pretty greedy and cocky.
And not only are you trying to like run it back in almost the exact same way, but now you don't have any like you hit the jackpot on people like Robert Downey Jr. and Chris Evans and Chris Hemsworth.
Yeah,
like who just embodied the characters so fully. Like you struck gold on every single one of those casting decisions. And that's also extremely hard to do 2 times in a row.
It is, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's just like that's the other part of it, is that like I feel a little bit spent and exhausted from that whole run, and it's like I need like a decade with no Marvel almost before I'm ready to be like, yeah, sure, let's do that again.
Yeah, it's pretty immediate, and I mean it. Like there was a point where I remember it was like there was a couple movies a year. That obligation didn't feel overwhelming to me. It's like, all right, I can go see Iron Man and also, Captain America or whatever. Like, that's cool. I can do that. I can make that work. The further they got, the more it was like, they were like, all right, this year we've got 5 movies. Yeah. And then now they're like, this year we've got 8 movies. And also 7 different TV shows we're dropping. I'm just like, I'm fucking out. And they got into this like quantum mania, multiple timeline,
multiverse,
crazy multiverse
shit.
And that pushed me away too, where I was just like, okay, I haven't even worked through the first multiverse. Like now we've got several of these. Like what the fuck is even happening? And I think for older fans especially, it just got unappealing for that reason. It's like, this is too much, man. Y'all are trying to throw too much at us. You're overdoing it. And I think they achieved something that nobody thought possible with that first run, where they were bringing in A-listers for every superhero film they had, right? They were able to cast, at one point, pretty much whoever they wanted, like whoever they went after. Like people were getting in line for these roles because you're going to make a killing, and your brand value is going to skyrocket. And even if everything in your life falls apart, you can go live off Comic Cons for the rest of your year, for your life, the rest of your life. Like fucking Merry and Pippin from Lord of the Rings, bro. You think those guys are just getting a bunch of acting jobs? No, they go around to Comic Cons and they get paid. It's like how Jersey Shore, like you're on the show, but really the real money is like basically being a host at clubs. Like they were dropping like 100 bands on Sookie, or what's her name? Snooki. Sookie's from True Blood.
True Blood, yeah.
Snooki was getting like 100 racks to go and fucking stand at a club and get drunk on stage. And like that's the like. So anyway, the point is, the Marvel thing, they really, really, really did it. Like they did it, and that should be commended, like for sure, absolutely. But then, like you said, the immediate, well, Now we got a fresh fucking slate.
Right.
Before you even gave people like me the opportunity to catch all the way up. And then just that those last two films were such smashing successes that if you didn't go see them in theaters pretty immediately, you kind of had them ruined for you. Like, you did. And I'm sure there are plenty of people listening who are like, oh, yeah, I know the end of Endgame. Like, well, me too. And I wish I didn't, because it sounds like it was a fucking blast to watch in real time without knowing what was going to happen.
Yeah.
But I got that wrecked for me because of the internet. So Marvel's been on a wild ride. I think just in general, like, they took us to this place where everyone was like, Hollywood can't do anything except superhero franchises anymore. And people got burned out. Like, kept having to hear about like DC and how like DC was they've made like 6 fucking Batmans. There's like 22 Spider-Man movies with like 3 different dudes playing Spider-Man. Like, I just don't care. There's nothing like really pulling me in to these superhero universes anymore.
Yeah.
And that's sad, Barrett, you know?
Or it's not sad, because maybe it finally means the end of like the only thing that can like succeed at the box office, as we saw this, you know, as evidenced by the 2 phenomenons this summer. Like, it doesn't have to be only giant tentpole franchise superhero movies anymore.
Pre-existing IP,
right? Like, that would actually be a real boon to us, I think, is like a return to a little bit of like, okay, maybe we don't need another 5 Fast and Furious franchise movies.
Yeah.
You know? And that you should know that I really say that with a lot of, you know, I'm choosing my words carefully there, and I'm not one to deride that franchise because it holds a special place in my heart.
Of course,
but like, don't need Fast and the Furious 15. I'm not going to go see it.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I definitely don't need it.
Like, let's give something else a chance. Like, let's do something new. Like, keep hitting me with fresh stuff.
Yeah, spending your entire annual budget on 3 pre-existing tentpole franchises that people have lost their appetite for doesn't feel like the
No, I don't think
move.
that's the recipe for success in 2023 and going forward.
But Loki season 2 episode 1 you enjoyed?
I did, and this is just to round it all out. Like, I feel like Kevin Feige and the Disney and the Marvel teams, like, I think the recipe for success right now to continue the Marvel thing going is to use those properties and to use that pre-existing IP to let people do interesting things within that world.
Like Star Wars did with Andor?
Like Star Wars did with Andor, exactly. And you know, there's at least a little bit of that happening in the Loki world. Just purely based on the fact that it like looks so different and is clearly in like such a little weird vacuum.
Yeah.
Just a bit because of its setting alone. And so that they're at least they're letting people cook in that world, even if they're going to try to do like some setup for this whole Kang thing.
That's how I felt about WandaVision too.
Yes, yeah.
But it was but as I was watching it, even like at some point I was like, oh, this is all set up. And I don't like that feeling.
Right,
like,
like
let this story be this story, man.
Yes, yeah.
Like the pitch for the next thing starts halfway through that thing.
Right.
I'm like, fuck y'all, man. This is ridiculous.
Yes.
Like, anyway.
And that was that's why that's one of the reasons why I liked Loki season 1 so much, is because you don't really get any of that sense of the setup until like maybe the last episode, and at that point it's kind of explaining some stuff that you had questions about anyway. So it was all put together in a very satisfying way, where it didn't feel like, okay, so basically what I watched was the setup for the next 4 movies.
Yeah.
And so we'll see how Loki season 2 kind of handles that. But yeah, I'll watch Tom Hiddleston and Owen Wilson banter back and forth as long as they want to put that on my box.
Sounds like that's fairly enjoyable, regardless of how the story goes.
It's like very, last thing I'll say, it's just very, they let Owen Wilson do some pretty meta stuff. Like Owen Wilson is a very easy guy to impersonate because of his cadence and the way that he says certain things, and the way that he like diverts to like explanations of and like asides of like within conversations.
Yeah.
And he's doing that in this show. They're letting him full on be Owen Wilson. And so it's just, it's pretty funny.
He's in a lot of the, what's the weird dude who makes quirky movies? And they're all the
Wes
same
Anderson.
stylistically. He's a Wes Anderson boy now. He's one of them.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. Foundation. So Barrett, you're.
I watched episode 8 of season 1
finishing
last
up
night.
season 1.
Yeah. Spoiler alerts for Foundation season 1 if you're not all the way caught up, but I'll tell you where I am. Gale has left the starship going to Helicon, which what is Helicon just straight up a black hole? Like what is happening there? Not sure.
Not entirely
Is it
sure.
next to a black hole? What is the giant black thing that they're floating around? I don't know.
Yeah.
But we've officially learned that she can feel the future. Yeah.
Yeah.
But then she doesn't want to go establish Foundation number 2, the secret foundation, as I like to call it. Instead, she puts herself in the cryopod and sets herself on a 140-year trip.
Yep.
Yep.
Big time jump there. Big time jump. That's pretty intimidating when you first come across it. It doesn't feel that way when you get into season 2, though. You're like, it ends up working out, is what I'm saying. I told you, like, end of season 1, I started to be like, what the fuck is happening? This is so much.
Right. And even when I was 5 or 6 episodes in, when we talked last week, I think, like, we talked about how we kind of already know, based on some of the things that we know about the book, and just the way that Empire and everybody has already been talking about time in this show.
Yeah.
That this is probably going to take the show is going to take us on a extremely long journey.
Yes.
Like this is going to cover hundreds, if not thousands, of years of time.
Yeah, it's what makes me curious to see how many seasons they're attempting to plan out here.
Which and it's what makes the kind of it's what makes the Cleon Empire cloning thing so interesting. Is because in such a nice little device.
Oh yeah,
it's because it's going to be Lee Pace the entire time as Empire, because he just keeps cloning himself. But
they decant a new one.
Yeah,
I love that they use that word even. Like,
he also, speaking of Empire, in this last episode, he went and he walked the spiral. Ross.
Ah, yes, the spiral.
Yeah, where he lied about a vision to defeat the Zephyr.
That was a tight episode, though.
Who was going to make his life hell because she was proclaiming to one of the foremost religions in the galaxy that cloned Cleons, were soulless.
Have no soul.
Have no soul.
Yeah, this was, and that was obviously part of, what's his name? The prophesizer?
Yes. Yeah. Harry Seldon.
Seldon's
one of the things he had prophesized was that, like, there would be an exaltation from one of the galaxy's core religions against Empire, basically.
Yeah, I love that they pulled religion into it. This show, like I've said before, does a lot of things that, like, Game of Thrones did well, where it's giving you this political landscape that's really fascinating because it's different than anything we have in our modern day. And there are things like clones running it. And then religious stuff is getting brought into the loop on several different levels. And there's a lot going on in Foundation. I got all the way through season 2, and I'll just say that this show not only maintains the momentum it builds from season 1, but really elevates itself in season 2. The question I walk away with is the same one I walked away with at the end of season 1, where I'm like, well, sick, that was tight. Also, how long are y'all going to do this? Like, because it really does, you cannot get a feel for, like, where is this story going?
Okay.
On a larger scale, right? There is, like, are we headed for, like, if there's a war coming, is it going to take us 6 seasons to get there? Like, what the hell is happening in terms of the big picture storyline? But it gets darker in season 2, brings new characters into the fold that make everything even more interesting. And I loved it, man. Like, I really, really loved it. So I'd highly recommend Foundation if you haven't watched it. If you haven't checked it out, and you enjoy sci-fi on really any level. Like, it's just good storytelling. There's just a bunch of good characters, a bunch of good storylines, and there are some pieces of it that can feel overwhelming when they're like, she shoots herself off in a cryopod for 140 years, and you're just like, well, what the fuck happened in the 140 years I just missed? But you end up...
We don't know.
You end up not
I don't
caring.
know. Yeah.
You end up not caring.
I mean, yeah, and it's effective, too, right? Because you watch her, I was watching that scene... And you put yourself in the shoes.
What that decision would be like.
And can you even imagine, like, being about to basically freeze yourself and being like, the next time I wake up, 140 years will have passed.
Everyone I know will be dead.
I mean, just like, and by the way, you're making this decision while you're just floating in, like, the dead of space.
Yeah. No, it's horrifying.
Yeah, absolutely terrifying and horrifying. And she just, like, does it without even flinching, which is just wild. It's just like, personally, Gale, I just would have stayed with digital Harry Seldon and gone and helped out with Foundation number 2. But, like, you do you.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, the show is just also very prescient. You know what I mean? Like it feels more timely than ever. It talks about things that are just kind of like constants and that are very constant in just like just global incidents and occurrences and conflicts and everything like that. And it's kind of wild, especially to be watching it right now. The warden is trying to get back to Terminus on the giant Invictus ship, while the Anacreons are trying to take it to destroy Trantor. And I don't know what's going to happen there.
Sounds like Star Trek when you say stuff like that.
It does, yeah. But a big cliffhanger there with the Invictus just like jumping again. Some real spooky stuff happening on the Invictus, by the way. Little Event Horizon-y, not gonna lie.
Yeah, there's some
space horror happening in that plot.
There are super creepy moments on this show where you're just like, oh no, but it's been fantastic. I finished The Wheel of Time as well. Watched the finale, season 2. It was wild, dude. Like it was the biggest episode they've done so far in terms of like set pieces and magic and battle and exploding and fucking crazy shit happening, and they did a great job.
Don't make me ask, Ross. Just tell me.
No Trollocs.
None.
No Trollocs. I told you, season 2 deals with a whole different fucking batch of like. I almost feel like they were like people didn't like the Trollocs. You know what I mean? Like
they focus grouped it. And people were like, what the hell are those?
What are these?
Get those off my screen.
Goat horse people with horns and like, yeah, I don't know if maybe they got some type of feedback there that they utilized, but season 2 was awesome. The Wheel of Time I continue to be fully on board for. And I'll just say this, I'm stoked we got to these 2 shows. If there's anything good that came from the long ass strike and not really getting any of the new stuff this year that we expected, I was forced to go back and jump on board with these 2 shows that have been out for a little while, that had their second seasons drop this year.
Yep.
And I'm happy about it because they're both very good, very enjoyable, and filling a hole that's like, it's probably the hardest hole to fill, you know, because it's fantasy and sci-fi. There's a lot of like not good shit in that realm.
Yeah, I mean, yes. Only rebuttal is that it seems like there's a lot of it out there, and a lot of it that creates
well, that's true.
A large fandom.
That's true. I mean, well, let me say this.
These shows are difficult to get, I think, to make your way into, as we've talked about before. You've found your way into both. I've found my way into one of them, and so that's definitely a positive.
Well, okay, like here's what I mean. On the largest scale possible, like when you're talking about huge world building, crazy shit.
Right.
That's really tough to pull off. And these shows both do it for me. Whereas like Silo, by comparison, that was a pretty easy ask. In episode 1, they're like, this is the silo. And like the only thing we didn't know was like, how many people are in the silo? But it's a small sect of characters.
Couldn't be fewer than a couple million.
It wasn't 10,000, Barry. It wasn't too complicated. Like it wasn't too crazy. It wasn't like, and granted, season 2 might get crazy. I have no clue what the hell's going to happen. But I didn't feel like Silo was as demanding in terms of, you know.
You're right. Yeah.
Like Foundation is 1,000 times more insane than Silo.
But I liked both. And I'm actually glad you brought up Silo, because one of the things that I was also just going to say about Foundation is that I had a couple of complaints over the course of Silo about some scenes or some episodes where I could just see the seams. I could just see the set a little bit too much.
Yeah, took you out of it.
That does not happen in Foundation. I don't know how much they're spending on Foundation, but if you told me it was $1 billion, I wouldn't be surprised, because it looks amazing. This show looks amazing.
Yeah, no, it's look.
The sets
I'm going to read you the first number that popped up when I Googled Foundation season 1 budget, and it says just $45 million.
Well, that's shocking, because they
That's insane. I would have guessed 45 mil an episode.
Yeah, because they made that budget stretch a long way then. Because like, I mean, if this last episode, like all the stuff shot in the desert with the walk of the with all the interiors in the caves and in the homes of the Zephyrs and
how did they do that for $45 million?
Yeah, and it's a lot of CGI obviously with the space stuff, and it looks incredible.
That is bonkers. Like, for comparison, Marvel spent $212 million on Secret Invasion. Amazon spent $300 million on Citadel and $1 billion on Rings of Power.
I mean, one thing that maybe that means is that they didn't have a star. They've got no real, like, Lee Pace is the biggest name in the show, right?
Yeah.
I
just thought
Jared
the CGI.
Jared Harris is like a known actor as well, but both of those guys, neither one of those guys is like
demanding a king's ransom.
Right.
Yeah. No, you're right. that's a shockingly low number.
That is a very low number.
Wow.
Yeah.
That makes it even more impressive to me. But yeah, no, it's great. It looks great. It feels great. You're never really taken out of it. No matter how bizarre and insane the story gets, it always keeps you hooked on some level. Been very impressed, man. Like, I've seen people over the last couple years, really just this past year in particular, saying like Apple is getting to the level that HBO was at and that we know HBO for being at, right? Where they're like, this is the prestige TV that you could always go to this platform and find something that's going to draw you in. And I kind of, balked at that. Like, there's no way. I just didn't believe it. And I think it's because I watched C and it stunk. And there was a couple other things on Apple TV that like just I didn't see it. It didn't work. It didn't work for me. The morning show, I didn't give a shit. And now I've finally watched, like, between Severance and Foundation and Silo and Hijack, obviously. It was called Hijack, right?
Yeah.
It's a terrible name too.
Hijack. No, it's a great name.
No, they've got me. They've got me. Apple TV is
shut up.
Apple TV is very good, man. They've been doing their thing, and God knows they have enough money. But good for them. Good for Apple for focusing on creating high quality entertainment and not creating whatever it is Mark Zuckerberg is trying to do. Zuckerberg, metaverse, paying Brady $1 million to be able to turn him into an AI chatbot so that you can talk to him, or Paris Hilton or Snoop Dogg. Like, that's what Zuckerberg has put his money and time into.
Yeah.
Thank you, Apple, for not doing that. It means a lot.
Shouts to Tim Apple.
Thank you all for being here today. We would appreciate it if you would support our sponsors. Today we had Athletic Greens. Just go to athleticgreens.com/dragon and get your greens. Links and codes for today's sponsor in the description of this episode. If you're an F1 fan, check out Bolin Media's premier F1 programming from Formula Bone at youtube.com/@FormulaBone and @FormulaBone on social media. For more from me, Ross Bolin, listen to the Ross Bolin podcast, wherever podcasts are played, wherever you get your OCC. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram @WRBolin. Mr. Dudley, where can the people follow you?
Yo, hit me up anywhere you want to, @BarrettDudley.
Go to bolinmedia.com/shop to get yourself some OCC merch and support the show. Again, thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. And until next time, peace.